Welcome back to the show. Today's topic, understanding the deal process with a private equity-backed buyer. This is Dave Kittle on the Dave Kittle Show. I'm the owner of Concierge Pain Relief Home Physical Therapy in New York City and the CEO of the Fieldmaker Group. We're currently acquiring practices in the New York and New Jersey area. And today we have Steve Tolger on the podcast today. He is the Vice President of Mergers and Acquisitions and Partnerships at Alliance Physical Therapy Partners. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Dave. How are you?
I'm feeling great. How are you?
Enjoying the day.
Excellent. So let's get into today's topic, understanding the deal process with a private equity-backed buyer. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can go into your roles and responsibilities at Alliance.
Absolutely. Yet again, thanks for having me on. So I run our mergers and acquisitions and partnerships here at Alliance. My background is in, investment banking and private equity and family office work. So I've lived in the deal world most of my career. Now, I'm not a PT by background, so I can honestly tell you that, but I have been exposed to it now for about a year here at Alliance, and it's been fantastic. It's a wonderful business, and my goal here is to meet great business owners out there, connect with them, look and see what they're looking for. It's about building a relationship and figuring out what next steps are for owners. So, my goal is to figure that out, and then hopefully we can work together and get a deal done or a partnership.
Excellent. And can you give us a little bit of a background for any of the owners watching or listening? If they don't know Alliance Physical Therapy Partners, can you give us a little bit of a background on the company and the scale and the reach that you guys have?
Absolutely. So Alliance Physical Therapy Partners is a private equity-backed group. We are based in Grand Rapids, but we have 15 brands located around the country. So you actually will not see an Alliance Physical Therapy clinic. And if you do, it's not us. So we get that question a lot. They're like, "Oh, I've seen your clinic, Alliance." I'm like, "That's not us." We have 15 brands around the country. We are over 100 clinics now, outpatient PT clinics around the country. So, we're in that growing sweet spot, and like I said, we are private equity backed. We were acquired last year, actually just about a year ago from right now, by Beacon Petty O'Keefe, which is you'll probably hear me say BPOC, is a private equity firm based out of Chicago. And they, one of the great things about BPOC is they are healthcare only focused. So, a lot of people get concerned about, a generalist fund maybe backing a company, not knowing a lot about the industry. But BPOC is healthcare focused only. So it's great to have, a financial sponsor who understands our business a little bit better than most would.
And so before BPOC, were you guys backed by a different private equity firm, or was it just through Alliance itself?
Correct. Yeah. But before that, we were backed by a GPB Capital based out of New York. And that transition happened about a year ago. And since that, we've had a lot of growth. And I'll be honest, I came on in January of this year to run our M&A and partnerships. It's part of our growth strategy from BPOC. So Alliance wasn't particularly acquisitive in the past, but they did a few before my time. But since joining here, we've done about five deals this year. Added about 10 clinics around the country. So we've been pretty active and pretty successful, and we're continuing to grow that way.
And in terms of the size and scale of your company, Alliance, you said in the pre-interview about in the top 15 or top 20 in terms of outpatient physical therapy clinic locations. It kind of depends on how we're categorizing them, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I think of Alliance, I think of outpatient PT. So when I say over 100, right, it's the clinic that you'd see, off the road, right, where you'd see, here in Grand Rapids, our group is called Advent, right? So that's the signage you would see here in Grand Rapids. We do have, another company called WorkFit, and we do have some hospital contracts, and we actually also have a company called BioCorrect, which does custom orthotics. So we do have a few other things, but our main focus is on outpatient PT.
Excellent. So then let's get into the components of understanding the deal process with a private equity backed buyer. So how do you start helping and assisting and communicating with potential practice owners? Maybe they reach out to you, maybe they're speaking to several buyers. They are they have most likely never sold a business before, these practice owners. They might have owned the practice for 10, 20, 30 years. So it's really important. We talked about in the pre-interview in regards to you and your firm kind of helping some of these practice owners, same thing that we're doing, kind of like guiding them along the process, managing their expectations, talking about next steps and timelines. So let's get into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, this is a conversation from day one, right? We're building a relationship, and I think that's what everybody needs to remember. Selling your business is a difficult process, but it doesn't have to be. But it's also a very exciting process. And we're here from day one to answer questions, right? I believe in something we really bank on here at Alliance is from day one, there's no reason not to be fully transparent and honest about what's going on, what we're thinking, and what you're thinking, because we both have goals. We both have things we're looking for. And, if you hide that stuff early on, it's going to come out eventually. And you'd rather just discuss it up front, and we'll do the same thing on our side. So, and I believe that's the best way to start any relationship anyway. So, first off, when you do reach out to us, one of the first things you actually will do, which I think is great, is even before you might hop on a call with me, our CEO, Richard Lever, he'll call you. So one of the great things about Richard is he's a PT himself. He's been a PT for 30 plus years. He's one of the very few CEOs in our industry that of a larger scale that is a PT. And he's been through it all. He's seen it all. And he'll actually have a conversation with you if it gets to the point where you're interested. And I think being able to connect to him on PT is super valuable. And if that conversation goes well, sometimes I join that, sometimes I don't. But if that conversation goes well and it's still something you're very interested in, your next conversation will be with me, and we'll talk about what your actual goals are for selling or partnering with us.
Got it. Do you guys usually get questions from physical therapy practice owners in regards to their, like, the pros and cons of a quote unquote corporate or a PE backed company, as opposed to, I mean, it's great that you have Richard, right? So he's kind of like your pure physical therapist practice owner. So that obviously helps. That's what we're doing. So I'm a physical therapist as well. And we have another physical therapist on our board. But in terms of the practice owners that you guys are speaking with or have spoken with before they decide to, make a decision and move forward, do they ever have reservations about interfacing or working with a private equity backed firm or company? Is that something they even bring up? And then you guys kind of help them get over the hurdles or the questions there? Or is it something that they don't usually bring up, and it's more of like, if you guys all build rapport, then the conversations move forward and it just goes from there?
Yeah, I think with us, I would specifically say it truly doesn't really matter that much. I think, we are private equity backed, and we're very transparent about that. We have no issues saying that, but our relationship with BPOC is fantastic. And, they really trust our leadership team here at Alliance to run the business. So obviously they're there for support and helping us and are always, asking questions, and we have approval processes with them. Absolutely. But in the end, the owner, it won't affect the owner, and you won't even know they're there really. You're working with Alliance, you're working with me, you're working with Richard, you're working with, our team going through the process. They're there, they're in the background, and they know what's going on, and I keep them updated, but in reality, you won't even know they're there.
Got it. So let's get into a little bit more on the timeline. So if you have practice owners that you're interfacing with, you guys are speaking with, they're somewhere in your pipeline, different levels of seriousness, right? So how do you guys communicate timelines? At the end of the day, it really depends on how quick they can move, right? Like, where are they in the decision-making process? Like, just speak to a little bit of the timeline here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When the conversation gets serious, and this is typically when an NDA has been signed, right? Which protects. It's really more for the seller than anybody else, of course, right? It's protecting your confidentiality and whatever you're sending us or whatever, right? That keeps us from telling anybody else about it, right? And it's very important to understand that the NDA really is for the seller. If it gets to the point where they are interested in selling, that's the biggest question, right? Is what's my business worth really? But there's really only one way to start undiscovering that, right? And that's requesting some financials. Now, obviously, on top of requesting the last three years of financials, right, is typically what our first request is other things that are very important to a PT business, right? Your KPIs, payer mix, your lease on your building, or if you own the building, right? I would say our first round of requests are less than 10. After that NDA, it's not a mind blowing list. Most people through their EMR or in QuickBooks can quickly print that stuff off. It's not like it takes a ton of effort. Most EMRs or QuickBooks can do it really fast. So it shouldn't be straining on the seller to pull that stuff together. They'll send that over to me, and I'll start doing my analysis. And from there, it really matters how fast we can hop on calls, right? Because of course, and I like to talk about it, right? When I look at financials and numbers, right, and we have these calls, and it's I'm going to ask questions, right? And I just want everybody needs to be aware that when I'm asking these questions, it's not because I'm saying you're doing something wrong or why are you doing this, right? This is me just trying to understand the business. And most of the time, my questions are actually helping you, because I'm trying to understand, certain things that we can do ourselves here, which most likely will increase the valuation of your business. So, that request happens. We'll have a few calls discussing, financials, the stuff you provided us with. And from there, we go straight from understanding that, and then obviously asking, like, is this still something you're ready to move forward with? And if that's a yes, we go straight to drafting an LOI, so a letter of intent, and where we give you a valuation and how we would structure the deal, and also a timeline of how long from signing the LOI to actually closing the deal. Now, it's purely dependent upon size of the deal and things like that. But I would say typically it's 45 days, 30 to 45 days is something we can get a deal done. But like you mentioned already, our side can move pretty quickly. It really depends on how the seller moves.
Sure. And in regards to like those, your top 10 data points in terms of what you guys are looking for, you mentioned the last 3 years of financials. So you guys, we're asking for the last 3 years of tax returns, right? P&L, income statement, balance sheet, et cetera.
Yep.
And then the KPIs. So whether it's, units per visit or, units per plan of care. And there's some top KPIs that either you guys are preferring or the industry standard, units per visit, units per therapist, common things like that, average revenue per visit in terms of reimbursement. When you're requesting those things, that's what we've seen. I don't know if you have any other feedback, but the amount of time it takes for a practice owner to even just get through that first step of getting all that information together. In some cases, it might not be all that handy. It's just going to take them some work. And then if they're treating patients, they're doing other things, it could just cause a little bit of a lag. And when I say a lag, that's all relative. It could be days, it could be weeks, and basically it could take, in some cases, probably longer. So do you use that as first of all, you said like maybe the top 10 things that you guys are looking for. So I know for us, it's important to not overwhelm the practice owner with like a huge data request, because eventually you're going to ask for more and more. You said, the lease agreement, if there's real estate involved, whatever. What we found is like, we don't want to overwhelm them. So it's going to be like waves of requests, right? But that first wave will be kind of telling in regards to, are they organized? Is their back office organized? Are they even looking at KPIs? Like, do they have these things handy? Are they using these reports from the electronic medical record? Because in many cases, they might not be. We've had practice owners, once we sign the NDA, they allow us to get into their electronic medical record and get these reports ourselves. So it depends. Every practice owner is different. So have you seen things there? Do you have any additional feedback or takeaways from that first step as to, is this individual serious? Are they organized? What other things does that tell you, if at all?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good question. We've seen them all too. I'll, I mean, and people get busy, right? And that's something I do understand, right? People have lives outside of this, right? And unfortunately, a lot of the work that is required to do this is kind of outside of your daily norm, right? It's outside. If you're still the one running the business, we know how busy you are. You got to see patients. So, and if you have a family, other obligations, right? All of a sudden your time's looking pretty thin. So we understand that. And full transparency, if you got to talk to me at 6:30 in the morning because that's when you're available, right? Fine, right? Not a big deal, because I understand, and we understand that it can be hard to pull this stuff together. Do I get concerns about it? Not really. Some people just haven't really thought about their business this way, right? And they've ran their business maybe for 20 years to the way they thought it was being done. And maybe their local CPA who helps them with their taxes and everything like that is saying like, hey, this is how you should run your business and all these things. And maybe for that reason it makes sense. But I think something hard for sellers to understand is when we, as somebody like myself who starts looking at information, we think of it in a much different lens than maybe you've looked at it the last 20 years. And that's not a bad thing. It's just how we have to think about it going forward. So some of our requests may be different, or, the way we're viewing things. And it's just our world compared to what, maybe your local CPA or accountant has been having you do for 20 years. So I think that can be a difficult thing is when you're requesting this stuff and they've been doing it this way. And then, they asked their CPA and the CPA was like, well, here it is. But then, we view it differently. Right. So sometimes there's a little bit of, difficulty there, but it's just open and honest transparency about like, no, this is what we're trying to do. It's not a bad thing. What you've been doing the past 20 years is completely fine. We're good. Like, don't think you're doing something wrong. That's not the case at all. We just have to think about it a little bit differently.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So next step, or the next phase in understanding the deal process with a private equity backed buyer, let's talk about a little bit of due diligence, and then that'll kind of segue into the cost, like the cost for the owner. You can paint some a little bit more detail there. So let's go into the diligence process.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I think is something we do really well here at Alliance is after that LOI is signed and we've come to an agreement on moving forward, there is, besides those 10 things that we did, pre-LOI, there's some significant diligence that has to get done between that LOI and closing. And that's a lot more to do with risk for us as a company. So due diligence is something everybody has to do for these kind of things. And it can be a little bit overwhelming to see a lot of these questions. And I like to tell owners that just because you don't know, or it's a no, that's not a bad thing, right? That's just us asking a simple question, right? And if it's no, that's probably a good thing for us, to be honest with you. So, and the other thing is this is deal size dependent as well. But most deals we look at for, when it's a smaller, single or two clinics, one of the things that we really think is valuable that we bring to the table is we do almost all of the diligence here in-house. So, I handle like the day-to-day, right? You work with me a lot. I call him like, the quarterback of the deal, right? I make sure everything's moving, communicating correctly. But, internally on our side, we have our chief compliance officer who does the compliance diligence, and she's fantastic, and she's an awesome person, and everybody loves working with her, right? So we do that work in-house here. And then we have a general counsel here. So our lawyer here, over the last year, we've really come up with like a nice standard set of legal documents, and the best term for it is plain vanilla, right? We're not trying to complicate this and drag it out, right? So we make it as easy to understand as possible. And now, obviously, you're gonna the seller's gonna want to have an attorney on their side. They're gonna need one. But outside of that, I don't think you'll need a lot of outside help to cut down on your costs. And also the way we structure our deals, like I said, and everything is very straightforward. So as a seller, hopefully you're not going to have to spend a ton of money on your outside legal costs. So I think that's the biggest benefit from LOI to close is you'll just be working with alliance folks. Pretty much that's it, which is great also for post closing, right? Is these are people that you got to know during the process, and it gives you a little bit more trust that if you got to know them and you liked them, right? These are the people that that the clinic's going to be working with moving forward, and that's a good feeling to kind of almost like dating, right? You're almost dating for a couple months, and that's a good feeling.
Absolutely. And so the fact that you guys have the general counsel in-house and the compliance officer in-house completing the chart audits and all of that, you had mentioned in the pre-interview that cuts down on expenses from both sides. So it's not like an external law firm that you guys potentially would have where they're taking their time because that external law firm has other clients and they're kind of in the business of billing billable hours and fees. So versus in-house, you guys have things in-house, so it allows your process to be faster and more efficient. And then therefore, if this whole process is faster and more efficient, then typically the seller, the practice owner, will have a smaller legal bill from their own lawyer because the process was faster and more efficient, as opposed to being drawn out where an external law firm is going back and forth with the seller's lawyer and taking extra time or communicating about superfluous details that aren't really critical to moving forward.
Correct. Yep. And then full transparency is we do deals without even a broker involved, which also can cut down. But brokers, I have been involved as well too. So it's all things that the seller decides to do, but we definitely have figured out a process here to cut down on expenses, and time is expensive, right? And that's the one thing you'll probably have to give up, but that would be the case whether or not full transparency for us, a larger acquisition, diligence gets a little bit heavier, but it's for these smaller deals, it's not. But a bigger deal, we would definitely have to hire some outside help, as there's a lot more diligence that goes into it.
For sure. What type of suggestions or advice might you have for practice owners? So whether we're partnering with them and acquiring them, or whether you guys are partnering and acquiring some or all of their practice, any other suggestions in regards to this process? So you had mentioned, for example, a lot of this type of work might be outside of the office or become a lot more time of their day. So whether it's evenings, weekends, et cetera, what are some things that could help private practice owners understand this process a little bit more? So in some cases, maybe if they're still treating 30 or 40 hours a week, if they're treating patients 30 or 40 hours per week, they have to carve out time elsewhere to interface with you and your firm and their own lawyer and all that. So maybe they need to take roles and responsibilities off their plate. Maybe they should probably delegate a lot of responsibilities. What are some other suggestions or feedback that you might have for practice owners so that they could have a smoother process in exiting and transitioning?
Yeah, and everybody has a different reason for either selling or transitioning, right? Some people have been preparing for it for years, and then other people, unfortunately, there's a life event or something where things, change that. So I would say, if it's the former where you've been thinking about it for a while, it's really good idea to start thinking about this 6 months in advance of when it's really going to start happening, right? To your point, in that 6 months leading up to maybe signing an LOI, you should be maybe transitioning some of your work to maybe another clinician at the office, or planning ahead for it, because it can be very time consuming. But at the same time, I think one of the things that like you talked about earlier, we can move relatively quickly. So as hard as it can be to find the time, if you kind of see that, light at the end of the tunnel, that think long term, you can really say like, all right, the next 45 days, I'm going to really have to buckle down and kind of, you know, sacrifice more time than I want to this. But once that closing day comes, I mean, it's really a celebration, right? I mean, you should be ecstatic and knowing that your life is going to significantly change in a great way. And so all that time effort you just spent, working with us and getting to know us isn't time wasted then, right? And it's kind of just a mindset thing that you have to think about going into the process.
So not just the liquidity event where they have more money in their bank account, but how else would their life be changing? Is it because a group like yours has more support, more resources? How like what else is in it for the practice owner in this type of scenario?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and then really, like I said, I'll learn this from a seller on day one. It's the number one thing I like to ask is like, how did you get your business to where it is, and what are you looking for? What's your goals, right? And we've seen it all. Some people are really looking to retire, take that liquidity event and say, hey, I'm ready to, enjoy life and take some time. So obviously that point, time is freedom, right? So you get to look forward to that. And for those owners, I really recommend, really thinking about it 6 months to a year in advance of figuring out who can run that clinic that you have employed right now, who can run that clinic without you there. I think is a really good thing to start planning about a year in advance, is figuring out who's that clinic director, who's that person I can trust to run this business if I wasn't here. That's something I recommend to the people kind of looking to retiring. There's other business owners who are, what I like to say, they just want to take some chips off the table, right? They're not quite ready to retire. They love what they do, which most PTs do, love treating patients. So I like to say, like, look, if that's what you want to get back to do and take some chips off the table, here's the benefits of working with us. You're going to only treat patients. Great. You are no longer doing billing, talking to payers. Alliance has everything that sits here in Grand Rapids to support you. We have RevCycle, we have CIV, we have legal, we have marketing, we have HR, we have our own internal electronic medical record system. So we handle all of that work. So anything that you refer to as back office that you could probably think of is something you will not have to worry about going forward. That is our responsibility. And I think that's super attractive, right? Because instead of working 60 plus hours a week, treating for 40 plus, doing back office stuff on the weekends and nights, you just freed up, 20 hours of your life without having to do the stuff that you really don't want to do. So I think you can think of it that way as well.
Yeah, awesome. Do you usually have owners reaching out to you guys? Are you guys doing a lot of outbound? How do you and owners usually end up interfacing and connecting?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both. We definitely have our outbound research that we do. Jill, she works with me. She's fantastic. She handles a lot of that, and she's a great personality that everybody loves to talk to. So, she does a lot of the kind of reach out, but also, I mean, word of mouth, right? Last year, we're relatively acquisitive and done some good partnerships, and our name is starting to get out there a little bit. So, people will start reaching out to us just through word of mouth, but we take inbounds all the time. You can go to our website, you can email me, anything like that if you're interested. And either I can talk to you or Richard can talk to you. It really is up to you.
Excellent. I think that would be a perfect place to wrap up. So anyone in the audience that's a private practice owner that is either in or around the markets and regions that you guys already have locations, or might have a 5, 6, 7 or larger location practice that maybe you guys would use as a foothold into a new market, what would be a good place for them to reach out? You mentioned either the main website or connecting with you, LinkedIn, email address. What's the best place for the audience to reach out to you or Alliance?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can head to our website. We have a tab that you can see that says partnerships working with us, and you can fill out a form where you can connect with us. You can have my email. Happy to reach out to me. It's steve.tolger@allianceptp.com, and we can share that information after this. Also on LinkedIn myself. Steve Tolger. So any way you want to reach out, get a hold of us. We're happy to have any conversations, and just excited to talk to you.
Awesome. So that was Steve Tolger, VP of M&A and Partnerships at Alliance Physical Therapy Partners, understanding the deal process with a private equity-backed buyer. Steve, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Dave. Have a great one.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE@CONCIERGE painrelief.com. Or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.